Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BC, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, word to my brethren, Harry Kane. Shout out to Tottenham. Harry Kane had a hat trick today in the Champions League. I enjoyed watching it. Shout out to Harry Kane. Probably the hottest striker in the world right now as far as soccer goes, or football. But anyway, point of this video. And this is a video that I wanted to do that I was looking forward to doing when I figured out that I was going to be making YouTube videos again. And, this obviously, as you can see by the title, has to do with Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, who most recently in the last couple weeks ago over in California, he fought the rematch Rungvisai. Unfortunately for him, not only did he lose, he got destroyed and embarrassed in the via fourth round TKO. And now any claims that I could make for him being pound for pound number one or even pound for pound top five vanished in an instant. And before I get into what I really want to say in this video, I want to just talk about the fight for a second. Now, obviously, on the night, all credit to Rungvisai. This is a guy, Rungvisai, that in the first fight, I didn't give maybe the credit he deserved. Because I thought Roman Gonzalez had made a valiant comeback and won the fight. But this is a guy that came into this fight. He trained his behind off. He really fought with a certain conviction. Usually they say when a fighter becomes a world champion, they get about 20% more confident, and you see them fight with more confidence and conviction. And that's what we saw from Rungvisai, and we saw quite the opposite from Roman Gonzalez. We saw a guy that didn't look like his normal self. And you could attribute that to a lot of different factors. I think there's a lot of factors that played into why Roman Gonzalez looked the way he did that night. But no excuses. Rungvisai was a better man, and he deserves all the credit he gets. He's definitely on my pound-for-pound list. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, he is the man at 115 pounds because he beat the man at 115 pounds, stopped him. So you got to give credit to Rungvisai where credit is due. My issue with Roman Gonzalez for this particular fight, and it's funny because people were saying they're using this fight to say that this is why Roman Gonzalez didn't deserve to be pound for pound number one and that he needed to make adjustments in the fight, which is why he lost. And my take on the fight was that the reason he lost this fight was because he made adjustments, was because he fought differently than the Roman Gonzalez that was a champion in full weight classes and the lineal champion at 112. I saw a guy in there that was reluctant to throw punches. I saw a guy in there that was trying to fight a style that he really never learned in the first place, and trying to fight out the back foot, try to be more defensive. And that's not what Roman Gonzalez is. Roman Gonzalez is a guy that is a pressure fighter. Defensively can slip and roll punches really well, but he has to be moving forward or be in front of you and unleashing combinations, putting the pressure, bringing the fight to the opponent. I didn't see that Roman Gonzalez in this fight. I saw a guy that was reluctant, gun shy, and I think I think one thing that people are overlooking with Roman Gonzalez is that for this particular fight and the one prior, he's had separate trainers in different fights. I believe the first fight with Rungvisai, he was trained by his father. This fight, he was trained by some Asian guy that he's known for years. Regardless of the fact, it's clear as day. And I was even kind of saying this when it happened after he beat Quadras, that the death of his trainer, his longtime trainer, Arnulfo Obando, that was going to have an effect on him. And it has had a major effect on him. So where does Roman Gonzalez go from here? I mean, traditionally, and I'm going to do a separate video on this coming up soon. Traditionally, when you look at the history of the great flyweights, the Miguel Cantos, the Michael Carvajals, traditionally between the ages of 29 and 31, 32-ish, they really hit a sharp decline. Roman Gonzalez is 30 right now, so I don't know, man. Personally, I don't really see when I look at him, I don't see a fighter that's declined. I just see a guy that doesn't believe in himself, and I think the reason for that, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I can only speculate. The reason I feel that he was the way he was in that night was it's like many fighters. A fighter could be on the wrong end of a decision, and because of that decision, they feel in their minds that they got to fight a different way, and because they lost the first fight. When in actuality, had Roman Gonzalez stuck to how he normally is, being a pressure fighter, unleashing combinations, taking the fight to his opponent. I'm not saying he would have beat Rungvisai, but he's not getting stopped in the 4th round, and that's just what it is there. Now, to the point I really wanted to get to in this video is that when he got stopped, it reminded me of a couple things. When he got knocked out by Rungvisai, it reminded me that, number one, boxing is a very unforgiving sport. Doesn't matter how good you are. Father Time can catch up with any fighter, and no fighter is invincible. It's another great reminder of that. That's number one. Number two, it reminds me that for fighters out there, get your money, man. Get your money. Don't try and please these fans, man, because Roman Gonzalez, was a guy that I believe deserves all the respect in the world, in the boxing world. And my problem with people when they talk about Roman Gonzalez is they don't know his career. They don't follow smaller weight classes, so they have no context on what they're currently watching. So I'm seeing people, when they comment on Roman Gonzalez or his career or what they think about him, they're commenting from a place of ignorance, blatant ignorance, admitted ignorance. And I think in many ways, Roman Gonzalez and his pound-for-pound reign exposed boxing fans. It exposed their lack of knowledge. It exposed their lack of appreciation. And I say lack of appreciation because Roman Gonzalez put the smaller weight classes, sub 130 pounds, below 130 pounds. He put those weight classes on the map. The only reason we care, and this is sheer fact, the only reason that many of us care or are talking about the guys like Naoya Inoue or Juan Francisco Estrada or Carlos Cuadras is because of Roman Gonzalez, is because that this guy was so good. Never mind the fact that he didn't speak English. Never mind the fact that he didn't have a boisterous personality. Never mind the fact that he wasn't an American or nor was he a heavyweight. He was a short, diminutive, non-English speaking Nicaraguan fighter. And that guy somehow, some way was still able to become pound number one in boxing, become a draw in boxing, which I think is no small accomplishment. Because usually if you look at guys who are popular in boxing, it's traditionally the American Olympians, the Mexican, or the Puerto Rican fighters. If you can be a guy outside of like that who draws well, you've done something in boxing. Which is why the guys like Gennady Golovkin, guys like guys like Gennady Golovkin, guys like Roman Gonzalez, guys who can build these fan bases, despite not coming from a background that will allow them to have a built-in fan base. You got to respect that because it means they really earned it, honestly. So when I see boxing fans say that Roman Gonzalez didn't deserve to be pound for pound number one at any point, then my simple question is, okay, if we go back to 2015, as Floyd Mayweather has retired from boxing, you got to keep in mind, Mayweather retired from boxing. Pacquiao had a loss to Mayweather, although I have my opinions on the fight. He lost to Mayweather. Andre Ward was a non-factor at that point. He was just, at that point in time, maybe months away from fighting Paul Smith in a tune-up fight to come back to boxing. You had Sergey Kovalev, who was still lacking that signature win in his career. You had Gennady Golovkin, who I believe around that time, only guys he'd really beaten were Martin Murray and Willie Monroe. So the jury was still on Golovkin. Canelo hadn't had a big win yet. So when you look at the landscape of boxing at that time, who deserved to be pound for pound more than Roman Gonzalez? Because at this particular time, when Floyd retires, Roman Gonzalez had just become the lineal flyweight champion of the world. He had become a champion in his third weight class. He was about 40-0, undefeated, knocking everybody out around his weight class. He was beating top 10 of opposition, the likes of Edgar Sosa, the likes of Brian Valoria, and he was looking sensational doing it. So like I'm saying, like I say, man, if he didn't deserve to be pound for pound number one at that particular time, and for as long as he was, then who did? Because Andre Ward sure as hell did it at that time. Pacquiao did it at that time. Mayweather did it at that time because he was retired. Maybe Klitschko, but Klitschko would later go on to lose to Tyson Fury later on in 2015, and really he never looked like the pound for pound number one caliber type of fighter. So I don't know. It's hard to argue that Roman Gonzalez never deserved to be pound for pound number one. I think if you do say that, you're arguing from a place of ignorance to small weight classes, and more than likely you don't like Roman Gonzalez because you think someone like an Andre Ward or Terrence Crawford or someone of that nature deserves to be pound for pound number one. I mean, even Terrence Crawford didn't deserve it or Roman Gonzalez because, and I would even argue with his current resume now, even with him being undisputed, no disrespect to him, but you beat an African club fighter to be undisputed. He didn't really beat anybody at 140. He did what he was supposed to. He dominated 140. He gets credit for that, but to say that even he deserves to be pound for pound number one over Roman Gonzalez at any point was crazy. I mean, now, yeah, because Roman got stopped, but I mean, Roman Gonzalez was taking risks. I mean, let's backtrack for a second. At the time that he moved up to 115 pounds, he started off his career at 100 and at minimum weight at 105 pounds. Then he moved up the divisions. Won world titles at 105, 108, 112. Was lineal champion at 112. Then he decides, you know what? I really want to go for the gusto. I want to challenge myself. I'm going to move up to 115 with no tune-ups. I don't want a tune-up. Don't give me a can. I'm going 115. Give me the number one guy. And the number one guy at that time, as we know, was Carlos Cuadras, WBC champion, 35-0. The guy had established himself as one of the powers in the division. Roman Gonzalez said, you know what? I want you. He went for Cuadras, had a great fight with him. I was there for it. Probably the greatest sporting event I ever went to in my entire life. And he doesn't just challenge the number one guy at 115 in his first fight at 115 for the WBC title. He beats that guy. And I mean, when you look around boxing, you got guys like Canelo vacating the belt. So that at that time that didn't want to fight Golovkin. You had Ward, who was at that time, let's see, was September 10th. He had yet to fight Kovalev, and even when he fought Kovalev in the first fight, the majority of people thought Kovalev won. So with that being said, man, I think it's hard to argue, what Roman Gonzalez was able to do. I would say for a good year and a half, he held that spot down pretty easily, and I would say that if you argue that, you just don't like Roman Gonzalez because. You're probably, and I hate to say this, but you're probably someone who's biased towards a certain race of fighters, and you can't stand to see someone who's 115 pounds, rated as the number one fighter in the world. That for some strange reason, the fact that someone's that short and that small and they're rated number one in the world, that bothers some people. They think that the number one fighter in the world shouldn't be somebody that's under 130 pounds, but. Whether you like it or not, look, Roman Gonzalez is an all-time great fighter at that weight class. Fighters at that weight class tend to age quicker. It's always been the case dating back, and I'm going to do a video on this soon, but dating back to Jimmy Wild and Michael Carvajal and Miguel Canto. These are guys that are the all-time greats of the smaller weight classes, and Roman Gonzalez has put his name right there with him, with the Ricardo Lopez's as well. In my opinion, the best flyweight fighter since Michael Carvajal. And, I think as boxing fans, if you truly love the sport, you should look at Roman Gonzalez as pound for pound number one reign, and you shouldn't look at it with any hatred in your heart. You should look at it as a great time for the sport where this Nicaraguan, came and he elevated the smaller weight classes, and he made us care, and he made us have to pay attention. And the fact that he was able to do that single-handedly, that shows you that he was a special fighter. And for that, if you're one of those boxing fans out there who, after the Roman Gonzalez knockout, if you were discrediting him or you were saying that he never deserved to be pound for pound number one, or that he sucks, or that he's like a 115-pound Brandon Rios, you're a disgrace to the sport. If you want to know why the sport is messed up, it's people like you guys who discredit fighters like Roman Gonzalez, who take on the best fighters, who take risks, who are humble in victory, but equally as humble in defeat. Roman Gonzalez is everything right about boxing. And I think as the pound for pound number one fighter in boxing, he not only did he represent boxing the right way, but I think he set a great example for fighters, all the younger fighters out there. So, yeah, man, I'm making this video, in good spirits. He lost, but guess what? A lot of great fighters lost, and you usually, hate to say this, but usually if you're someone who retired undefeated, you either A, cherry picked your whole career and had the deck stacked in your favor, or B, you ducked countless challenges and your resume really wasn't that good in the first place. So, if the greatest fighters in the world like Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Robinson have losses, you know, it's no big deal if Roman Gonzalez has a loss because the guy constantly fought top opposition. You know, if you just go from his run, from him being here in the States, you know, he opened up with Edgar Sosa, a guy that was top 10 for many years, one of the better fighters in the division, whooped him. Brian Valoria, a guy that probably established he established himself as probably outside of Roman and Estrada. At 112, he was probably the most consistent fighter at the weight class. You know, and outside of those guys, you know, the best one at 112 at the time. Roman steamrolled him. Then he fought a guy, Williams Arroyo, who at the time was a top 5 rated fighter in Ring Magazine. You know, Olympic experience, knockout power. A dangerous fighter. A lot of people will say, well, he only had 17 fights, but still a dangerous fighter. Roman Gonzalez made relatively easy work of him. Then he goes and he fights the number 1 guy at 115 in Carlos Cuadras. You know, a guy that has ridiculously great foot speed, wears you down with his speed, his power, his combination punching. And Roman Gonzalez went through hell to win that fight, and you know, he got out of there with the decision. Then after that fight, you know, he fights a guy in Rungvisai who, you know, many people, including myself, did view as a step down from the other guys he's fought. But if you knew his career and you researched a little bit about Rungvisai, you knew that he had given Quadras problems. You know, you knew that he was a worthy opponent, a top 5 fighter in the weight class, and that Roman Gonzalez was going to have his hands full, and he did. You know, Rungvisai was able to give Roman Gonzalez his first knockdown in over a decade in the first fight, but then Roman came back and he rallied, and many people thought that he won that fight relatively easily. It was a great comeback. He nearly stopped Rungvisai. And then unfortunately for him, you know, mentally he wasn't the same guy after that. And he wasn't able to overcome that, you know, for a number of reasons. But that's boxing. We've seen it many times, and it'll happen many more times after this. And he got stopped by Rungvisai. But, you know, there is no fighter in all of boxing who has consistently challenged themselves year in and year out, you know, for the last 2 years, 3 years, more so than Roman Gonzalez. And I think that deserves praise. And on this channel where I've talked up Roman Gonzalez, you know, I've went to bat for Roman Gonzalez when people like Boxing Ego, who I'm gonna be responding to Boxing Ego really soon, because he made a video after Roman got stopped, and he didn't say my name, but he said some things to where I know he was talking about me. So I'm gonna respond to him real soon. But yeah, Roman Gonzalez, you know, he's someone that, you know, whether he wins a world title again or he gets back to championship level, he's someone that on this channel will get his damn just due, because when at a time where guys were acting so damn soft, didn't want to challenge themselves, didn't want to take risks, didn't want to act like champions, you know, here we have a guy who acted like a champion, who when maybe people accused him of ducking Inoue, which I thought was hilarious. You know, they said, oh, Roman Gonzalez ducked Inoue. Like one common phrase I heard from people that don't like Roman Gonzalez, they said, oh, well, now I see why he ducked Inoue, when they completely disregard the fact that before Roman Gonzalez even got to the States, when he became lineal champion in 2014, and he had just beaten Akira Yagashi, around that time, when he was probably at his absolute best, Inoue had become champion at 108 pounds, and then he actually skipped 112 pounds, jumped 2 weight classes to fight an old 39-year-old Omar Narvaez, and then that's where he became a champion at 115. And we give him credit for that. Inoue is a tremendous fighter. But you got to look at it like this. Roman Gonzalez was right there. He was the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in boxing. He was the lineal champion. And Inoue elected to jump his weight class to go fight a 40-year-old man in Narvaez. And Narvaez was a good champion, but an old champion when Inoue fought him. And that's who elected to fight over Roman Gonzalez. So look, you can say Roman ducked Inoue because there was an offer there and he didn't feel the money was right. But let's not disregard the fact that years before that, Inoue had a chance to fight Roman Gonzalez and he elected to fight a 40-year-old man. So let's just call that out for what it is. But yeah, man, Roman Gonzalez will get his credit on this channel. You know, people disrespect him, and that's fine. It just shows that they're not boxing fans, that they are fans. They're fanboys and cheerleaders for certain fighters, and that's okay. That's okay. People accuse me of being a Roman Gonzalez fanboy, a cheerleader, but you know, if you're going to be a fanboy for somebody, at least be a fanboy for somebody who is good for the sport. I love Roman Gonzalez. I think he's a tremendous fighter. He's probably my favorite fighter of all time. Be honest with you, just because I thought he represented so much good about the sport at a time where boxing and fighters were just being such, for lack of a better word, I hate to say it, but they were being such pussies. Like, honestly, especially with Canelo and the whole GGG thing, where Canelo said in Mexico we don't F around, and he vacated his belt and created a weight class. Like, at a time when crap like that was going on, you had guys like Roman Gonzalez challenging the #1 guys, much bigger men than him, top guys in the division, no tune-ups, and he would go in there and he would beat them. And in many cases, he would bring the fight to them, and he'd have them running on their bicycle, and just like he was for the first 4 or 5 rounds of the Quadras fight. So with that being said, I want to end the video. I've been talking for 20 minutes straight, but yeah, man, you boxing fans out there who disrespect Roman Gonzalez, like, honestly, you guys are everything that's wrong with the sport. I mean, you guys, I've heard people say that fighters like Roman Gonzalez don't last, but last time I checked, he's 47-2. He's had 49 fights. He was like 47-0, 46-0 before he lost. So he lasted quite a damn long time before any of you guys really cared who he was. And the only reason we have this attention on this great weight class of 115, which in my opinion, maybe outside of light heavyweight, maybe more so than light heavyweight. I think it's very debatable as to which weight class is better, but it's arguably the best and deepest weight class of boxing. And we have Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. Thank you for that. So that's what it is. That's my opinion on you dumb boxing fans out there who discredit Roman Gonzalez and say he wasn't pound for pound #1. As you guys can see, I'm calm. I'm secure in, what he did in the sport. And, I'm hoping that he can revive his career. If not, and if he never gets back to a championship level, it's still been a great career. He's still a great fighter, and he's still going to go to the Hall of Fame, still first ballot. No doubt about it. So, yeah, that's my opinion. You guys can give me yours in the comments down below. Take the time to subscribe, and you can love me or you can hate me. But I'm just a kid from Dang It. So until next time, take care, guys.